It's Friday, and I want to know what's on your mind. This is a show about real people, real issues, having a real conversation every Friday. So,
Okay,
with that said, hello and welcome to What's on Your Mind.
excellent.
And
Thank
now
you.
we'll just start with the introduction. So, who wants to take a shot? Ben, just introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing currently.
Yeah, so my name is Ben Tubo. I think of myself as an entrepreneur and a producer. I have a daytime gig as well, but I think I define myself around my passions, which I consider it to be a passion around humanity and a passion around Black culture. So that's me.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, Ben. Go ahead,
Okay,
Lamar. Introduce
excellent.
yourself.
All right, well, I'm Lamar Anderson, and I am the founder, CEO of Axum Creative, and it is a photography agency specifically specializing in social justice photography, and I focus on, highlighting the positive projection of African culture, people, heritage, and I offer education as well. So that's been my passion, but. During this quarantine, I've been uh, certainly retooling things, right, as an entrepreneur, business owner, and things like that. But I've been very inspired. And so I've been doing a lot of writing, creating, and just doing things, for myself, photography wise, and staying healthy.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. Well, we'll get right into it. Let me just start by saying thank you so much for being a part of the show. So,
Okay.
with the national election just around the corner, the Electoral College is always a source of controversy. So, with the first question, should the Electoral College be restructured to reflect the current population of our country, or should it be eliminated from the election process as a whole? Who wants to jump in and start?
Okay. Well, what I'll say is, having had this conversation yesterday, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this at
Wow.
all. So
Okay.
this is really good timing, I suppose. The university just works in these ways, but
Yeah.
the Electoral College, and certainly if many of you have understood kind of the origins, right? You realize they specifically designed it in a way where it's not reflective of um, being based on the population. So I think the question right now, I suppose it really seems kind of relevant. But I think if you just do the basic history on understanding the origins and the inceptions, that was something that back then they even decided. So for me, looking forward now, I
Mhm.
can't imagine there is all that much change in terms of perception of the benefit to change it to where it is more based or weighted heavily more so on the popular vote. So,
Okay. Okay. Ben, what you think?
So, I think my thoughts around that is, there's certain things that we can question in hindsight, right? And doing that doesn't necessarily give us the premise upon which it was implemented. But for today and where we are as a country, I don't think it doesn't necessarily provide a solution to anything as prescribed, right? So there's
Yes.
no need to have, um, I'm just trying to say it the right way. It doesn't provide more representation than the popular vote does. And
Mhm.
so because of that, it inherently doesn't add any value to what the country is trying to solve for today.
Correct.
So I actually think that is reductive to the voice of the people. And if you're really saying that
Mhm.
America is a democratic country and you want full representation of each person within the country, the electoral vote college doesn't necessarily do that. So
Definitely.
in hindsight, I'm not understanding fully because I've read about it some. I don't think I have adequate clarity around why it was implemented. So I don't want to go back and put myself in a situation of inadequate information.
Mhm.
But for today, I don't think that it really serves the purpose that it was
I'd
intended.
love to kind of add to a little bit what you're saying, and I think it
Yes.
really addresses exactly what I was making mention of before in the origins, right? So, if you look and understand that when they were discussing whether or not, like you're saying, to take into account the population,
Mm-hmm.
because there was this idea that the South had less people. Well, in fact, specifically as it related to suffrage and for African people there at the time, they made sure that they were excluding them. Okay.
Correct.
So again, that notion that it's representative of a population, right? And so again, here it is. You have essentially Europeans deciding that we want to make sure that we can eliminate, any vote that is going to challenge our kind of hold on things. Now, granted, they're talking amongst themselves between South and the North, but at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, they already took into account what we're talking about today is how do we open it up for more representation for ourselves and all these other groups. And so what I'm saying is, and if that was 17, I think it was roughly 87 or 1767,
Mm-hmm.
the notion then becomes, well, really what's changed, right? Because, for these last, if we go roughly 200 and a half years, the principles have, refined themselves, embedded themselves. And so I think you'd be hard pressed to kind of right that wrong right now with simply something like that. So,
Yeah. Do you think it'll ever be structured or eliminated in our time or our lifetime?
uh, no, because I think at the end of the day, we are living in a place that has never been designed to be a democracy. I think if that was the case, you would see a lot more
Mm-hmm.
self-balancing systems where you can see that, we wouldn't have had for the first time, in what was it, '08, the first quote unquote black president, right? Because we would have already had, people who would have been elected, like if you talk about like a Shirley Chisholm or, all the different people who have come before who
Mm-hmm.
really tried to be there. At one point, I suppose you can talk about Dick Gregory and not Sharpton, but Jesse Jackson. So what I'm saying is, there's been that long history of us really mobilizing and really trying to do things with the guys that it is a democratic practice or process, and it is very open and inclusive. But I think that when you look at even things like the Constitution, just very
Yeah.
basic, it does not have the word democracy in there. Okay. So I think, when we really take a sober look and remove all emotion and then we look at it from a logical standpoint, I think it's very clear, beyond just the Constitution, all the various policies, practices, and procedures that have existed have been refined, so that things like what we're seeking
Right.
haven't, taken root.
Yeah. Yeah. Ben, you have anything else want to chime in on that one, or?
No, so to that, is it going to be changing in our lifetime? I don't think so. Is it going to change? I think absolutely. I think one of the things, if you want to think about George Floyd and some of these other things that, just, the wealth gap, like the economic issues and, healthcare and all these issues that affect humanity and that disproportionately affect a larger part of the population as opposed to the 1%. I think ultimately there's equilibrium in everything, right? There's always a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep having these scenarios where there's imbalance in representation, there's imbalance in the voice of the people who speak, and imbalance in all these things. And if you go back and look at, from the Roman Empire to the Incans to the Mayans, right? Equilibrium, it always happens.
Mm-hmm.
So is it something that we're going to see? I think fortunately for us, the chaos that's the politics of America right now creates an opportunity that allows people to actually start seeing and questioning things that they otherwise would have taken for granted.
Yeah.
Right. Even if it doesn't change in our lifetime, but the awareness of the fact that it can change would create the momentum that would ultimately lead to some kind of balance. And I don't know what that balance is going to be, but I think there's going to be some balance to it.
Yeah, we just got to stay hopeful and optimistic that hopefully it will and be representative of everybody inclusively.
Absolutely.
Since we're talking about reconstructing, the Hollywood industry is obviously in a state of change. What do you think it will take for the entertainment industry to financially recover from this pandemic?
Okay. I will say, my very cursory kind of viewpoint is it'll recover in a way that is, I wouldn't say any less viable or successful. Oh, prior to this call, I was driving and I was thinking there's going to be a boom in every sector when every governor of every state says, okay, guys, back to work. Things are, A-okay. You don't have to walk in and wear a mask. You don't have to, do all these different, things that we've been essentially slowly but surely conditioning ourselves to kind of accept. I think there will be a boom. Everything that is currently needed will be needed 10 times over, right? So business owners will find that boom. So with Hollywood, they've already done the tightening of the belt, right? Because we're 4 months in. So they made the necessary adjustments to understand, okay, we're still in the black. We're still, being able to have productions, right? Now that they've, accepted different ways of, doing things and finding those benefits in having to essentially, change their perspective and ways in which they did daily operations, right?
Right.
So as a return to, studio lots and return to, people really being back out in the public space, I think essentially it's going to, be almost from day one, while, just to kind of answer your question specifically about, what's it going to take? I don't think it's going to take much, because I think, the hard part has been done for the most part. So everyone's really, I think, waiting for that starting gun so they can kind of run out the blocks, and get on to do what they're doing.
Right. And I kind of agree too, because if you just think about it, to me, it's like this pandemic has really accelerated things that were already going to happen anyway, especially with the streaming process. I mean, that was definitely going to evolve even further. And this pandemic has truly excelled that, because I don't know, in my awareness of the whole streaming is that people, the whole idea is to have people get what they need without leaving their home, ordering food, seeing a movie, interacting without leaving their home. And unfortunately, this pandemic has caused that to accelerate. So the entertainment industry, just like you said, Lamar, is I think they've already taken into account the necessary means in order to do that, and they'll adapt to change, and financially they'll recover, get over and recover, tenfold. So, which they always do.
It.
Ben, what do you think about it?
So I think, again, you touched on one half of what I was thinking, which is where the industry was going in the first place, right? So with streaming and all these other OTT services, you can basically say they didn't need to recover because they actually got pushed ahead a little bit. That's one half of it. The other half of it will be the big studios and, who do like the big major pictures and needed to get $1 billion and stuff like that. That part of it is going to take a while to recover, right? Because you're thinking about the value chain of that to include the AMCs of the world and all the other distributors that sit in the middle. That's going to take a while because coronavirus is not, even when it goes away, if streaming sticks around, want to assume that people wouldn't be as willing to go out to movies because they're used to spending time now and consuming content a little bit differently. Yeah. For crew, on the other hand, I think it's a real opportunity, right? For crew and for producers and writers and stuff like that, because
to be innovative. to think
Right.
of
They're innovative and they're
Right.
telling different stories and they're getting different opportunities. And, you know, if you write it at first, if you had a script that was only shot in somebody's house and they didn't have a lot of cars flying around and a lot of
Mhm.
VFX and stuff like that,
Mhm.
not a lot of people would be keen to listen to it. But now, if you do write that kind of a story and you say something around, you know, something that's very social, like, you know, something that stirs the mind a little bit more, like a social experiment. There's so many different things that can come back or that would become a little bit more pronounced and get a little bit more advanced because of where we are. So the industry is going to change. I don't think that recovery for it will be going back to what it was before. That's going to take a long time. But even if it comes back where people are comfortable going out to movie theaters and doing some of the things that were always done before, some of the interim opportunities will take up some of the air that would have gone to some of the previous things that were being done. So it's going to be okay, I think. It's just, I think it's going to change some.
It's just going to be a new way of presenting content.
Absolutely.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So, since pivoting off of the COVID situation, since COVID is affecting the entire world, what's your take on how the U.S. is handling it? Anyone jump in on that one? That's a
Is the U.S. handling it at all?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I think the U.S. has handled it like a feuding family. You know, everybody. There's no in a situation where you need strong, uniform guidance and leadership. Which to me, I'm a proponent of the government because the government is, I think, the spine of a lot of things for a country as big and as diverse and as geographically spread out as the U.S. with different vestiges of power. There has to be a spine in the middle. So you can't have Georgia, who the governor is suing the mayor of the city of Atlanta today for face masks.
Right.
And in Glendale or LA, you're having everybody to mandatory mask when you get out, and there's really no procedure. So I think, can we really say the U.S. is handling it? I can't say that. It's happening here, and it's taking people for what it is. I think people have succeeded not to believe that this is coronavirus. Some people think it's a hoax.
I know.
Like some people think the numbers are being made up. Right. Some people. So I don't think. I almost think that the U.S. needs a hard reset. If the country is going to get ahead of this thing, it needs a hard reset where they come together and say, here's a national plan of how we're going to attack this. Then we can say they're handling it. For now, I think it's just a runaway train that's going down the track.
I know, real fast. Lamar, what do you think?
Okay. So what I'll say really is I'd like to offer up, some thoughts, right? One thought is, does your fear, does my fear, does everyone's fear, okay, interfere with your freedom? Okay. So I don't know and so that's my thought, but I'm not quite sure if you have read I suppose, I don't know if it was a report more so than a stat, but the CDC last week released data about the likeliness of death. And so are you familiar with this information?
No. Go on. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I bring this up so it puts it in perspective, right? Because oftentimes, we as a people collectively, but for this conversation, I'm talking about people that look like us, African people throughout America, are very late to the game with really, really finding factual information that helps them create a sense of peace of mind, okay, and then allows them to operate in a place of informed information that allows them to make their decisions better, right? Because right now, I think you have a lot of mania. Okay, I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of disconnect, even though we're talking about social distancing and we're unifying and coming together in such things like this. But you can walk down the street right now, not wear a mask. There's someone approaching you that has a mask on. They will go off of the sidewalk, go around the cars, and then get back on the street. Okay, so again, coming back to the idea of fear and freedom. So the point about the CDC, they released a study. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's a study, but a stat that basically breaks down if you have symptoms of COVID-19, the chances of you dying, okay, was 1 in 5,000. It could be 5,000 or 500 or 5,500. Okay, so plus or minus 500. If you have no symptoms, okay, no symptoms whatsoever, 1 out of 6,726.
Wow.
Okay. Now, when you put that in context to automobile crashes and deaths, you're more likely to die of an automobile accident. You're more likely to be struck by lightning. Okay, so that helps me put into perspective, you know, what I'm seeing, how people are operating. Okay, and then I can begin to ask other questions. Okay, so what do we say? It's a hoax. I mean, we know people are dying. We know that there is something that is killing them. So in no way does this diminish that, but it helps to put it in perspective so that way we continue to live our lives, right? In a way that is humane, that is thoughtful, and still essentially community. So last year, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, 1 million people died of tuberculosis. Okay? 1 million people died of tuberculosis.
Wow, that's
there was no pandemic, right?
Yeah.
There was no wearing a mask. So when we understand these things, we can kind of put in context, okay, well, what am I hearing? What am I being told? What am I being asked to do? So then it becomes a bigger, conversation that has more than just the 10 talking points that, each mayor will say every day at 12. I don't know if you're in LA. You had Garcetti at one point, Gavin Newsom at one point. So depending on, where you get your information and how much you're willing to, dive into the details of things.
Yeah.
It can be very disheartening, really, to come up against people who are operating from a place that is not central to really, understanding the situation that they're in.
Right, because they promote fear as opposed to providing the proper information that will help people, honestly, to keep people sane. Like you said, I mean, that other statistics regarding that other virus, I mean, and, look what happened, it's like,
But you didn't hear about it. You see what I mean? And no one was told, hey, you need to be wearing a mask, right?
Right.
So it's just things like that. So I suppose to really answer the question as to how the U.S. is handling, I think there's something larger beyond what we're being told. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, in wrapping up the show, are there any words of encouragement that you would like to share? And where can people find you on social media? So anyone can jump in. Start with you, Ben.
So for me, a couple of things that I say to myself with everything that's going on, and it's talking about what's on your mind, and I'm thinking to myself, like, my mind is usually a maze. Like LA traffic has nothing on my mind, right? So there are a couple of things that I tell myself, or that I try to feed into my consciousness, and one of them is hope. Yes. So I try to be hopeful in the way I see things and the way I act, because it's a lot of things that can press you down. And I also have this line that I try to find things to fuel my positivity. And so for folks around, or people that I talk to, it's it's the same message, right? Let's be hopeful and let's find ways to fuel our positivity. And if you want to find me I got a business online that's called VIP Socio,
Okay.
and it's really around Afro culture. What we're trying to solve for is to provide linkages between Afro culture and the Caribbean and Africa and the US. That's what we're doing. So I'm usually on there, pretty visible around. If you call customer service, you might find me. Social media, I'm Tubobe, Tubobe, and that's all on Instagram. My social media game is weak. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Go ahead, Lamar.
All right. Okay, so the things that I'll offer, is to stay positive, both in mind and body. Healthy, eat really clean food if you can. Drink lots of water, and just the thought about weighing the fact, or the thought about, does fear interfere with your freedom? So as you're living life, consider that. I do think it's a time of inspiration, innovation. I certainly have experienced, the utmost creativity throughout this time, and I'm very blessed for that. So I would, wish that on everyone, and definitely do things that keep you connected to family. For me, like I said, I am a social justice photographer, so a lot of what I do really is principled around African culture throughout the diaspora, right? So whether you're born in America or anywhere in any other continent of the world, and so you can find me on Instagram at Axum Creative. That's AXUM Creative. Same for the website, Facebook, or LinkedIn. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so very much for being a part of the show. What's on your mind? It's been a pleasure, and we will be in touch. Okay.
All right. I appreciate
For
you.
the rest of the evening. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.